Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome back to The Explainer. So, if you're joining us today, you're probably looking to unpack some of the deeper, maybe hidden layers of literature we're covering in Unit 1 from the Term 2 English textbook. And man, we have a really fantastic piece to dig into today. We're going to break down Edgar A. Guest's classic three-stanza poem, Teamwork. We'll go through it stanza by stanza, exploring the text, the vocabulary, and really getting at the core arguments Guest is making here.
So, right off the bat, we have to ask ourselves, is the single deed ever enough? That right there, that's the core conflict of the entire poem. It's the big showdown between individual glory, the star player, the solitary hero, and collective success, the shared victory of a team. Because let's be honest, in a world that constantly praises the standalone genius, Guest is really forcing us to pause and ask, does personal achievement actually mean anything if it's not tied to something way bigger than ourselves?
Moving on to Section 1, the poet of the people and Edgar A. Guest's legacy. Because, before we read the verse, we really need the context. Knowing exactly who wrote this classic sets the stage for everything we're about to read.
So, Edgar Albert Guest. He lived from 1881 to 1959. But the absolutely crucial thing to remember about him is his nickname. He was known as the poet of the people. He wasn't out here writing dense, super obscure poetry that only academics in ivory towers could decode. No, he wrote for the everyday person. And he was actually so beloved for this totally approachable, relatable style that he served as the Poet Laureate of Michigan. Knowing this completely changes how we read Teamwork, right? Guest is speaking directly to us, to our everyday ambitions, our egos, and our daily struggles.
All right, Section 2, Beyond the Lone Hand, as we unpack stanza 1. Let's get right into the verse and look at how Guest sets up this temptation of the individual thrill.
Listen closely to these opening lines. Guest writes, "It's all very well to have courage and skill, and it's fine to be counted a star, but the single deed with its touch of thrill doesn't tell the word the man you are." Notice what he's doing here. He starts by totally acknowledging why being a solo star is so appealing. He admits, yeah, it's fine to have courage and skill, but then, boom, he drops the hammer. He immediately points out the limits of just relying on your own personal ability. That quick solo thrill, it doesn't actually show the world your true character.
Now, what's really interesting here is the word deed. It's defined simply as an act or an achievement. Guest uses this specific word to basically question the real value of a solo achievement. Think about it. A deed on its own is just isolated. It's an act happening in a total vacuum. And Guest is arguing that an isolated act, no matter how thrilling it feels in the moment, just isn't enough to define who you truly are. Moving through the rest of the first stanza, he tells us exactly why that single deed falls short. He writes, "For there's no lone hand in the game we play. We must work to a bigger scheme." This is where he completely pivots away from the idea of playing a lone hand. He's reminding us that life, or frankly whatever big goal we're chasing, is absolutely not a game of solitaire.
And catch that word scheme. It just translates to plan. Guest is saying that every single thing you do has to lock into a much larger collective framework. It's like a giant puzzle. You can't just go off and act randomly on your own. Your actions have to actually align with the bigger plan of the whole group.
Which leads us to this incredibly powerful question at the end of the stanza. How do you pull with the team? Once he strips away the shiny illusion of individual heroics, this is literally the only metric that matters anymore. It's no longer about how strong are you or how fast are you. The real question is, how well do you integrate and pull your weight alongside everybody else?
Next up, Section 3, the spirit of the team. We're unpacking stanza 2 now. If that first stanza was the setup, this one is the conflict. This is where Guest dives into the messy battle between our selfish dreams and our collective goals.
He kicks off the second stanza by poking right at our egos. He writes, "They may sound your praise and call you great. They may single you out for fame." And isn't that true? Society absolutely loves singling people out. We love giving out MVP trophies, we love individual accolades. But Guest is warning us about the illusion of personal praise. Sure, it's intoxicating, but it completely blinds you to how real, lasting success is actually built.
Take the word fame, which is defined here as glory. As we're exploring this, we really have to stop and ask ourselves, is personal glory actually the ultimate objective? Like, when you finally achieve that glory, is it even sustainable if you did it all by yourself? Guest setting up fame as a trap. It's a huge distraction from the real work.
Let's see how this builds when we contrast that isolated fame with the word mate, meaning a companion or partner. Guest follows up his warning by saying, "But you must work with your running mate or you'll never win the game." The contrast is just incredibly stark. Fame totally isolates you, but winning the game, that demands a partner. You literally cannot cross the finish line without your running mate.
This maps out the entire architecture of the poem perfectly. On one hand, you have the lone hand and selfish dream, and battling against that, you have the bigger scheme and spirit of the team. Guest is explicitly telling us that the real work of life is never ever accomplished by someone stuck in a selfish dream. The battle is won or lost based entirely on which side of this divide you choose to live on.
To wrap up stanza 2, he credits victory to the spirit of the team. Now, the definition of spirit here is will, or determination, and we really need to grasp this nuance. The spirit of a team isn't just about, wearing the same color jerseys or giving each other high fives. It's a shared will. It is an absolute, unbreakable determination to achieve that bigger scheme, that shared plan together.
Okay. Section 4, Forgetting the Self, as we unpack stanza 3. This final stanza is the ultimate resolution of Guest's whole argument. He's completely torn down the myth of the solo hero, he's proved why the team is necessary, and now he tells us exactly what supreme teamwork actually looks like in practice.
He writes, "You may think it fine to be praised for skill, but a greater thing to do is to set your mind and set your will on the goal that's just in view." Once again, he gives a nod to the ego. Yeah, it feels amazing to be praised for your skill. But then he introduces a clear hierarchy. There's a greater thing to do. He completely shifts our focus away from getting personal validation and points it right at the immediate shared objective. You have to lock your mind and your will onto the goal that's right in front of the team.
So what does that actually look like in the real world? Guest gives us a super specific gut punch of an example. He says it's helping a fellow man to score when his chances hopeless seem. Just think about the weight of that. The ultimate test of teamwork isn't just doing your own job perfectly, it's the sacrifice it takes to lift up a teammate when they are in a completely dire, seemingly hopeless spot. You're using your courage and your skill, not to get the glory for yourself, but to make absolutely sure your teammate gets the win. Real quick, before we hit the climax of the poem, we have our final glossary term, or. It's just a classic poetic abbreviation for the word over. It's a tiny linguistic detail, but it keeps the rhythm moving so smoothly, right into the most impactful lines of the whole piece.
So, the absolutely crucial point lands right here in these final two lines. What is the ultimate definition of teamwork, according to Edgar A. Guest? It's forgetting self till the game is over and fighting for the team. Notice he doesn't say you should just suppress yourself, he says forgetting the self completely. It's a total surrender of your individual ego for the sake of the collective victory. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to chew on. In a modern culture that is constantly screaming at us to build our personal brands and chase our own 15 minutes of fame, do we actually still have the capacity to completely forget ourselves until the game is over? Because if you ask the poet of the people, that is literally the only way the battle is truly won. Thank you so much for joining me for this breakdown, and hey, keep pulling with the team.